Once upon a time there was an old goat. She had 7 kids. She loved them as much as only a mother can love her children. She was going to go into the forest, bring herbs and branches for lunch. She called all her children and warned them to be afraid of the evil wolf. He often pretends, but you can immediately recognize him by his rude voice and black paws. The kids understood everything and assured their mother that they would be very careful.
Okay.
The old goat set off calmly. Little time has passed. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and shouted in a rude voice that the kids should immediately open it. But the kids from the rough voice realized that it was a wolf. They answered that it was not Mother's voice. Her voice was kind and thin, and this voice was very rude, which means it was a wolf. Then the wolf went to the merchant and bought himself a large piece of chalk. He ate it, and his voice became thin. He came back, knocked on the door, and in a thin voice asked the kids to open it. The wolf put its paw on the window and waits. And the kids saw her and answered that the mother's paws were not black, but white, which means it was a wolf. Then the wolf ran to the bakery and asked to give him some dough. The wolf anointed his paw with the dough. The villain approached the door for the 3rd time, put his white paw on the window and knocked. They saw the kids that the paw was white, and thought that it was their mother. They opened the door, but there was a wolf in front of them. They got scared and began to scatter in all directions. One kid jumped under the table, another on the bed, the 3rd on the stove, the 4th into the kitchen, the 5th into the closet, the 6th under the sink, and the 7th hid in the grandfather clock. But the wolf found them all, opened its jaws and swallowed one by one. Only one thing he did not find: the youngest, who hid in the clock. Having eaten his fill, the wolf left. He stretched out on a green meadow under a tree and fell asleep. Soon an old goat came home from the forest. Oh, what did she see there? The door was wide open. The table, chairs, benches were overturned. The wash basin was broken. Pillows and blankets were thrown from the bed. She began to look for her children, but she could not find them anywhere. I called them by name, but no one answered. She went up to the clock, and in response there was a thin voice of the youngest kid. She took him out of there, and he said that a wolf came and ate everyone. How the goat cried for her poor children. Finally, she left the house, and the youngest kid ran after her. She came to the meadow, so a wolf was lying by the tree and snoring, so that the branches were trembling. She looked at him from all sides and saw that in his swollen belly something was moving and floundering. She guessed that these were her children, and was very happy that they were still alive. She told the kid to run home as quickly as possible and bring scissors, a needle and thread. Then the goat cut the belly of the wolf with scissors, and from there one kid stuck out its head. And then the others jumped out, all 6, and nothing bad happened to them. What a joy it was! They began to hug their mother, jump and dance. Then the old goat said it would be nice to teach the wolf a lesson while he was still sleeping. They pulled stones and stuffed them into the wolf's belly. An old goat sewed up his belly, but he did not notice anything, never even moved. The wolf slept, got to his feet and felt such a thirst in his belly that he decided to drink water from the well. He barely approached the well, bent down to the water, and heavy stones pulled him to the bottom of the well. 7 kids saw this and began to dance for joy with their mother. That's how they taught the evil wolf a lesson. Doomed by fate to lead a hectic life, Lemuel Gulliver again set off on a voyage on the adventure ship 2 months after returning home. But as soon as the ship passed the Strait of Madagascar, a storm overtook it. Strong gusts of wind carried the ship to an unknown land. When the sailors saw the land, they decided to inspect it and collect fresh water. Gulliver went down to the shore with the sailors, and the crew scattered across the island. Not finding water, Gulliver decided to return to the shore. But as soon as he approached the ocean, he saw that the sailors had abandoned him. They were sailing away in full sail from the huge giant who was chasing them. Frightened, Gulliver rushed into the interior of the island. He ran to a barley field with huge ears and realized that he was in the land of giants. Gulliver sat down to rest. But before he had time to catch his breath, he noticed a huge foot that was about to step on him. Gulliver started screaming as loudly as he could. And the giant noticed him. He lifted Gulliver with his hand, examined him intently, and carried the little man to the owner farmer. The farmer tried to speak to Gulliver, but his voice was so loud that it deafened the little man. Then the owner brought Gulliver home. At the house, the farmer's family was preparing for dinner. The little man was seated on a table where gigantic pieces of beef and bread lay. But before Gulliver had time to break off his bread, the farmer's son grabbed it upside down and began to shake it. He mistook Gulliver for a toy and tried to put it in his mouth. Then the father loudly threatened his son and asked him to treat the little man more carefully. Later, the farmer's 9-year-old daughter made a bed for Gulliver, sewed clothes for him, and even taught him the language of the giants. The girl gave Gulliver the name Grildrig, which meant dwarf. He called her a nanny. Gulliver aroused great interest among other giants, so the farmer began to show him at fairs for money. But frequent performances undermined Gulliver's health. Then the farmer happily sold the little man to the queen. So Gulliver moved to the palace and became the darling of the royal family. However, the court dwarf, who was no longer considered the smallest man in the kingdom, disliked Gulliver and ruined his life in every possible way. Once, when Gulliver was strolling through the garden, the dwarf began to cower the apple tree. And Gulliver had to escape from the falling giant apples.
Oh no!
And on another occasion, an agile dwarf pushed Gulliver into a huge jug of cream. And only the cook, who entered on time, saved the little man from inevitable death. But it wasn't just because of the dwarf that Gulliver got into trouble. So one morning during breakfast he was grabbed by the cook monkey. Like a cub, she began to rock Gulliver and then dragged him to the roof. The giants rushed to save the little man. And as soon as they climbed onto the roof, the monkey threw Gulliver off. Fortunately, he managed to catch onto the shingles and was safely rescued. In general, Gulliver's life in the kingdom was happy. He often accompanied the queen on her travels. They even made a special travel box for him. And once on another such trip, the servant brought the box with Gulliver out to the sea so that the little man could enjoy the fresh air. But then a shadow began to flicker over Gulliver's head. A sea eagle flying past noticed prey in a box. He grabbed the ring on the lid of the chest with his beak and carried Gulliver over the ocean. At some point, the bird released the box, and the captive found himself in the open sea. Gulliver barely managed to open the top hatch. He started shouting and waving his handkerchief. Finally, he was spotted from the ship and helped to get out. So, after all the adventures, Gulliver returned to England again. For a long time, he could not get used to objects and people of normal size. And Gulliver's wife, frightened that he had gone mad, strictly forbade her husband to think about traveling.